guys, welcome back to Of Stone and Clay. This is episode 113. Today we have the terrific Tasha Worth. Thanks for joining.
I'm really nervous and happy to be here.
Yeah,
So
okay. Are you
thanks.
more nervous or more happy?
I don't know. I think maybe it's hard to distinguish between the two.
Okay.
So
They kind of
I'll
overlap.
keep you posted. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So Tasha is a social worker and licensed therapist. So today we're just gonna just heal together, you know?
Love it.
Yeah, without any surcharges.
Perfect.
Hopefully, we'll see. But yeah, tell me why you decided to get into the therapy space, why that was a passion of yours, and yeah, just a little bit about that background.
Yeah. I mean, Taylor, you've been in this long enough that you probably know that what you're really asking is like, tell me your trauma, right?
I wasn't trying to go there, but because I mean, people have different reasons for getting into it.
It's
But
true.
yeah, if you have some trauma you'd want to share, feel free. But yeah.
No, I am actually always very happy to talk about these things. I would say like maybe it started, I come from a large family and my three youngest siblings are adopted.
Mm-hmm.
And so from a very young age, I kind of had some exposure to the social work world and all that comes with that. And I think that kind of the idea that you could make a career out of working with people and just doing the real stuff, like thinking about families and individuals and helping, like, I think that really stuck with me. And I've been told my whole life that I'm just a really, like a deep feeler. And I've kind of gone in waves about how I feel about that. Like there were times where I was like,
feels a little offensive.
Yeah, I'm like, okay, so I cry a lot. It's like you're just calling me a crybaby, basically.
Yeah, or overly sensitive.
Yeah. And I used to struggle with that. And it's been really cool to see how, I mean, there's always two sides of that coin, right? Which is like, sometimes it is difficult to hold back my emotions because I feel things really strongly. And other times it's a really beautiful thing to get to share that emotion with somebody and to connect on that level. And so I feel like I got to make a career out of something that is just kind of innate. And so that's I think a huge part of it, at least.
Yeah, that's awesome. Do you feel like as a kid you were aware that you felt deeper than most, maybe, or that you were overly sensitive? Not overly sensitive, but very sensitive.
Yeah. And this is where it's interesting because I often wonder, not to get like too existential right at the beginning, but you know, when we look at personality, what is it that really is just innate about an individual, and what amount of it can be attributed to like so many different things, like where you were born or birth order or family dynamics or cultural, you know. And so I don't necessarily believe that I feel deeper than other people. I just think that for whatever reason, that's who I am. I cry a lot.
Well, I think some people, correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like somewhere deep down inside of us, most of us are deep feelers, but some of us, for a multitude of reasons, struggle to access it or feel comfortable letting it out.
Right.
You know, like I was a very sensitive kid, but I never, you know, my family dynamic, I never felt sheepish about like crying to my parents. I never felt bad that I was easily brought to tears. Like my parents made me feel very like, it's okay, like, you know. But some people, their childhood was probably very different. As soon as they teared up, they get yelled at, you know.
And especially as a kid, I think you're right that those experiences are so formative in even just the way that like our brain wires itself. like as kids, we look to the adults in our life, we look to the parents and the people who have been on the planet for a while
Yeah.
to learn, like, okay, how do we stay lovable? How do we stay safe? What do I need to do to fit in or to like function in this world? And if
Yeah.
the message is, oh, we don't cry
Right.
or, we don't feel our emotions deeply, then I mean, that's some pretty strong messaging for a brain that is literally trying to figure out
Yeah.
how to be a human.
Right. That just becomes the normal.
Yeah.
Yeah. So are you primarily working with people that have decided to go to therapy because of maybe a court order or because of divorce, an adoption? Is it usually mandated in some way?
No, there definitely are those cases where
Yeah.
that happens, but generally my experience has been working with people who have sought out therapy
Uh-huh.
themselves,
Yeah.
or sometimes if they're a teen, it's like their mom wants them to go or
Yeah.
things
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
that. But um, I haven't ever worked in that setting before, mostly just, yeah, people who are choosing to go.
Gotcha. And what is your like, I'm sure you cover so many things with people, but what is your favorite part to like, hey, if we can have a little breakthrough here, if we can get to this point, like that makes you maybe not professionally, but just personally feel more fulfilled.
Yeah. Ooh, I feel like there's a lot of things because I mean, I really do just get jazzed about therapy and
Yeah.
about healing because I feel like there's nothing more important that,
Mm-hmm.
we can do.
Yeah.
And so the first thought that came to mind when you said that is getting to witness somebody learning about how their body works through trauma, or how their body is really their friend in all of the complications that come with trauma and mental illness and all that.
Yeah.
And healing that relationship is so beautiful to me.
Yeah.
That's probably my favorite part. And so that comes with some psychoeducation, but
Yeah.
also just, feeling the feelings and all that.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you ever struggle with like being a deep feeler? Do you ever have moments where you're like, I want to just sit here and cry with this person, but maybe I need to be a little bit more like removed so I can give them
Mm.
counsel? Is that a
Yeah.
hard balance to strike?
It really is. And um, I think when I was first beginning as a therapist, I really struggled with that because one thing that working with other people through their difficulties, their hardships is going to do
Mm-hmm.
is bring to surface your own
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think at the beginning, especially like during my program, I was actively running from my stuff
Uh-huh.
and trying to sit down with other people as they were confronting theirs.
Yeah.
And
It was not working.
it's not pretty when that happens. It was like, you cannot do both.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And so that was a big wake up call for me, where it was like, if I am not doing this myself, then I am not being present for another person's grief or
Mm-hmm.
another person's pain. And so I do think that that's the most important thing I can do as a therapist
Yeah.
is take care of my own mental health and make sure that I'm bringing a regulated self as much as possible into therapy, so that when I do have those moments where somebody is sharing something really painful for me, I can, if I want to cry or if I'm feeling like I need to cry, it's because I'm with them
Yeah.
and not because
It's triggering.
not because I'm having an emotional,
Yeah.
a reaction to my own trauma. And
Right.
the lines get blurry there. I'm not pretending like
Sure.
it's always just one or the other, but um yeah, if that makes sense, I
Yeah.
guess.
No, totally. Okay. So when someone comes into your office, do you feel like they usually have a clear cut idea of like, this is my problem. Can you help me work through it? Or do you get a lot of people that they're just kind of like, I don't know, I'm just lost or I'm depressed. I struggle with anxiety. And it's more like, okay, let's start unpacking from day one. Like, do you feel like is the normal?
Yeah, it's an interesting question because I think you see so many different perspectives in
Mm-hmm.
therapy. Um, Sometimes someone will come in and they will have an idea of what they want to work on. And, maybe it's like I have some things from my past that keep cropping up, or, any number of things. And sometimes somebody will come in and they'll just say, like, I just have no idea what's happening with my life.
Yeah.
Like, they feel so disconnected from their emotions, their body, whatever. And they're like, I just need someone to tell me if I'm crazy. Like, am I losing my mind? And they need someone to help, like, put the pieces together of what's going on.
Right.
So yeah, I think it really depends, but hopefully we all get to the same place.
Right. Do you feel like there's something you wish like most people knew before they went to therapy?
That's a really good question. What do I wish people would be able to know before therapy? I think what comes to me is the notion that compassion is healing. And that, I think, can be one of the hardest hurdles for a lot of people in therapy, is understanding that we don't heal from using shame or from using different techniques of, like white knuckling through the pain and changing our behaviors. I mean, like, that stuff is good,
right?
But to, like, metaphorically, instead of just like putting a Band-Aid over an open wound that's infected and festering, like, the compassion and the grace that you give yourself, that's the surgery. That's the, like, we're going in and we're figuring out, why this huge wound is there, and like, metaphorically doing that harder work.
Yeah, I feel like, okay, will you be my therapist for a second?
I would love to.
Okay. I feel like because I've never felt an overwhelming, like, oh, I should go see a therapist, right? But I've felt like it'd be nice to have one on retainer that I could, like, go check in with every once in a while, or like when I'm struck with the blues, go talk to. But I think if I did go in, the first thing I would say is, like, yeah, like, my life's pretty good, blah, 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 but I just have these passing mercurial moments where I just feel sad and lonely, or whatever negative emotion. And of course that's life and that's normal, but I just wish when those moments came, I could get out of them quicker or easier. Like, it's easy to just get stuck in that feeling and that negative emotion. Yeah, what's your advice on that struggle?
Yeah. It's interesting. There's a modality of therapy that I use and that I really align with, that's called IFS, or internal family systems. I don't know. Are you familiar? Okay.
Teach us.
I'm about to blow your mind.
Yes. Okay.
So the idea behind IFS, internal family systems, right? It's like how you would approach family therapy. If there's a family sitting in the room, is you'd be addressing the issues in a way where every voice is heard, and every individual, we're checking in with them to say, okay, mom said that, and Timmy, you're having emotions. Like, what can you tell us about what's coming up? And you're kind of watching all these parts, right? All these people. And the idea is, we have different parts inside of us that almost act as separate entities. I don't think we have multiple personalities, but the idea is, okay, if I have one part of me that really wants to be taken care of and really wants to be, just to know that someone's got me, and another part that's fiercely independent,
right?
And that's like,
they're conflicting.
Let me do my own thing. Like, it can be really uncomfortable in the body for us to have these two competing, like, entities inside of us, or needs. And to feel like I'm literally going crazy. I feel like I'm at war with myself. Like, how do I hear everybody out? And so the idea is, I might not always feel like I need to be independent and alone. Sometimes I might be feeling like I want to be taken care of.
Yeah.
But if you have a part that keeps surfacing and keeps expressing a need in certain circumstances, it might mean that that part needs something and that its need hasn't been addressed yet.
Right.
And so I don't know if that's what's happening for you. I mean, it's
Yeah.
true that there is just sadness in life, but
Mm-hmm.
like, I think oftentimes that can be an indication that maybe this part has a burden that it's carrying,
Mm-hmm.
that it needs our help to go in and say, yeah, why do these situations feel hard for you?
Yeah.
And what can you tell us about your experience? And did that answer your question? I don't really even remember what it was.
Yeah. I think so. And it's tough because I know you're probably like, well, I would ask you 10 follow-up questions and then we could really get somewhere.
We could just do a session right here.
Right. But yeah, I think for me, probably the biggest source of pain, and it's when you say this like in a public space like this, it sounds trite because you're like, well, people have so much bigger pain than me,
Mm-hmm.
but it's just what I'm feeling, right? And this is my world I'm in. But I think my biggest source of pain has just been, heartbreak and like not being married and just all the things I want and I don't have,
Yeah.
and then combined with like the uncertainty of the future that's connected with those wants and desires, And so I feel like I've done a good job of recognizing them, admitting them, like trying to accept them, be grateful for this and this and this, but it's like they still are there in the back of my mind at all times, So it's like I'm mostly pretty happy and satisfied with life and look for the good, but yeah, sometimes I just get struck with like these waves of sadness. I mean, I feel grateful that they don't drown me.
Mm-hmm.
They don't overtake me and become untenable, but sometimes I'm just like, man, I wish we had less waves,
Hmm. Yeah, I really relate to that. And actually, I had an interaction with my sister not too long ago that was pretty similar. We talked about, yeah, how hard it is to be single and to
Mm-hmm.
be like, to feel like you want those things, you want the family and the companionship and all those things. And I was talking to her about this pain, and she was like, well, does it make sense to you that you want those things? And I was like, yeah, well, makes sense. Like, those are good things to want.
Mm-hmm.
She said, well, then maybe the challenge here then is to just accept that there's sadness here
Mm-hmm.
and to periodically expect it to happen.
Yeah.
And because when you understand that this is actually a sad thing for
Mm-hmm.
for me, for
Yeah.
my body.
Yeah. My heart.
Like, yeah,
Yeah.
to feel lonely.
Uh-huh.
Like, I don't want to invalidate that feeling in me by saying, okay, time's up. Like, I've grieved you long enough and now you got to get out there.
Or yeah,
Like,
let's be strong. Let's not think
right.
about it. Yeah.
Because if I sit with that part of me long enough,
Mm-hmm.
I learn that it's a good part. Like,
Mm-hmm.
it wants those things because it wants to love. It wants to, like, all those things. And for me to hear that part story and say, okay, I get where you're coming from, but now, like, I'm going to lock you up in a box. And like I would never do that to somebody who just expressed to me that, like, this longing that they're feeling. And so I think the challenge is just expecting that you're going to have feelings about it and allowing that to happen in your body, the grieving process to happen. And the really incredible thing about our bodies is we move through feelings.
Yeah.
It's innate, but because our prefrontal cortexes are so developed, we can really get in the way of that process.
Mm-hmm.
But when we tap into those, I mean, when we're able to do that, like, we move through the grief and we come out the other side regulated. It feels revolutionary to me to be like, yeah, like, grief used to be so scary to me. And now I'm like, oh, my body knows how to do this.
Right. yeah, my body's like reacting appropriately.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's easier said than done, but there have been moments where when I'm sitting with that feeling, that specific feeling of pain, I'm like, darn it, this is actually really beautiful. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, you're like, it is beautiful to feel this much and this strongly. Like, I mean, you could liken it to like losing a family member or a friend. Like, when you're grieving it, it's still like you go to a funeral, people are crying, but they're also hugging and they're laughing because they're remembering things and they're just so happy to be together. And so it's like something deeply sad can also be really, really beautiful.
Mm.
Like, usually, I think.
Yeah.
But but yeah, sometimes you're like, well, I'm not in the mood for something beautiful.
Yeah. Like, I was really hoping today would be a happy day.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's it's interesting to me, it in my own, belief system, I I believe that one of the reasons why I'm here on earth is to get a body
Hmm.
and to learn the ins and the outs of it and to learn what it's like to be in a body.
Yeah.
And so I think things really changed for me when I realized that emotions are so, I mean, they're so human, right?
Yeah.
They're part of this experience. And so there's actually nothing more important that I could be doing with my time than learning how my body works.
Hmm.
Like, I believe that we have loving parents that want us to become like them. And so sometimes when I'm feeling so intensely, I'm like, I just think like, this is godhood right here. Like
Yeah.
this is the work of my eternities,
Right.
is
Right.
like to be feeling right now.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that kind of puts things into perspective for me. It makes something really hard, really beautiful at the
Hmm.
same time.
Yeah. And it's just this eternal refinement. You know, you're playing the long game with yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's like, when do we get to the end of the grieving? Like, when have I grieved enough that I'm like, don't have to do that anymore?
Yeah. Yeah.
And it doesn't come.
Yeah. Right.
But more peace and more perspective definitely comes, which changes the way
Yeah.
that the sadness feels and the grief feels. But our our heavenly parents weep, I think, when we are hurting,
Yeah.
or when that's part of love. That's part of being
Yeah.
vulnerable,
Mhm.
is your actions can affect how I feel.
Yeah.
And I don't want them to stop feeling that way about me.
Right. Right.
I would never want that. And so I guess we got to keep that open, that door open to grief, because that's here for the long haul.
Yeah. 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 I loved what you said, but before we even started, you said like you were feeling a little anxious, a little nervous about the podcast, and you said, and so I quickly checked in with myself to ask why I'm feeling this way. And yeah, I guess my question is, how do you establish that practice where the second you have, maybe not the second, but when you have an emotion, you quickly can go inside and be like, okay, is this emotion? What does it mean? Why is it here? What can I do? Like, what's your step by step process to kind of not, I don't know, be so in your head?
Hmm. This is unfortunately a long game, I
Yeah.
think, because things really changed for me. Um, well, I guess I should say I know what it feels like to live really disconnected from my body.
Hmm.
Um, right. Our body knows how to move through feelings in the same way that, like, if a deer is running from a predator, a cougar,
Hmm.
since we're in Utah County, but like,
Yeah.
um, it knows afterwards that after that scary thing happened, it needs to re-regulate physically, and so they'll shake, or they'll like
Hmm.
there's a physical process that happens
Yeah.
there. It's very mammal,
Hmm.
but as humans, we have these really developed prefrontal cortexes that can impede that natural process. So if I have something really scary happen to me, like, for example, something embarrassing happens in front of my peers,
Hmm.
and my body goes into fight or flight, and I'm feeling, oh, I'm scared. Like, this is not a good feeling. But I know how to make that feeling go away. And I pull out my phone and I'm scrolling, and all of a sudden I'm not feeling anything.
Yeah.
Like, I'm gone.
Yeah.
Well, my body has not re-regulated. It doesn't. It keeps it until eventually there's some kind of release.
Yeah.
And so if that happens where the anxiety just keeps coming and coming and we just keep blocking it out, then like pretty soon we're operating on really high levels of stress, and it's like, I just don't understand why everything is so overwhelming to me.
Right. It's because you don't process anything.
Right. And that can happen also, like if you're having really big feelings and you have someone say, don't feel that way. Why are you feeling that way?
Yeah.
Like we can be shamed out of that normal process too. And so, I mean, this sounds really crunchy, like really granola, but like I had to figure out what my life could be like if I just connected to my body, and if I just said, all right, I'm feeling anxious, and instead of pulling out my phone right now, I'm going to call a friend so that I can talk through this and I can cry if I need to, or whatever the physical process is. Like sometimes you just want to squeeze something, or like sometimes your body really does need something physical to happen. And choosing to face it and to just bring your stress levels down just even that little bit, like our brain starts to rewire, and it starts to say, okay, that scary thing happened. We were embarrassed in front of our peers, but then we went home and we talked to a friend about it, and then we felt better, which must mean that this isn't an ongoing threat. Like we're not still in fight or flight about that.
Yeah.
And so the next time that happens, we can feel a little more comfortable saying, oh, this is a scary feeling, but I'm going to stay with it because I know that I get okay afterwards.
Yeah.
It's really a rewiring process, and just trying to pull ourselves away from those dissociative mechanisms that are so easy to fall into today.
Yeah. So would you, what do you suggest, like, if you're feeling some really strong emotion that is kind of jolting and scary, and you don't have like the mental fortitude at that moment to reach out to a friend, what is a good way to feel it and not escape it? Is it just kind of, I don't know, just sitting by yourself and crying, or grieving, or just really thinking it through, going for a drive? What do you think is the best option? Like say you get your heart absolutely shattered and you're driving home and you're a disaster, and this is just hypothetical. Of course, it's never happened.
You would never.
I would never be shattered or so affected by something. But and you're like, yeah, I could reach out to a friend, but then I would just cry, and I don't want to do that right now. Like, what is it unhealthy to just like go watch a movie and try to turn your brain off? Or is it healthy to just go home and cry and listen to sad music?
Well, it's an interesting question, because one thing that I feel very passionately about is not demonizing dissociation or, those mechanisms of pulling ourselves out of emotion, because it's actually highly adaptive for a brain to be able to do that.
Yeah.
Right? Like if something really scary is happening and you don't have the resources to handle it, the brain can go away so that it doesn't kill you, so that your brain doesn't just explode.
Yeah.
Like that's really amazing.
Right.
And like in times of serious trauma, if someone can't get safe from the trauma, their brain and their body protects themselves by going away.
Yeah.
It's really a beautiful thing. It gets more complicated when we're not in an active danger and we're trying to feel our feelings. We're trying to move through these emotions, but now we don't know how. And so it's not a bad thing in my mind. It's just something that we need to learn how to work with, how to work through.
To balance.
Yeah. And so I would say if you're having big emotions and you don't feel safe, like safe enough to call a friend or safe
Mm-hmm.
enough to, I think it makes perfect sense to me why you would turn on the TV.
Yeah.
Like, I really understand that.
Mm-hmm.
And if what you can do is, I'm listening to one sad song and I'm going to feel it for 2 minutes, 30 seconds, however long the song is. And then you're like, and then I'm going to go, whatever your coping mechanism is, right?
Yeah.
Like, I'm going to go work out at the gym really hard
Yeah.
or whatever, you know, like, meeting yourself where you're at and not shaming yourself for where you're at, I think is so huge.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it would be wonderful if anytime any of us had an emotion that we needed to move through, that we just like brought a friend and sat down with them and said, I need to feel right now.
Yeah,
But that's just not the reality for a lot of
Right.
us.
Right. Yeah. I think for me, the best thing I've done is to go do something physical. Like that's been the best way to sort of in the moment mitigate the pain and let me kind of escape from it, but I'm not trying to numb myself. I'm just like, let me go do something physical. And then like, cause if I go play basketball for 2 hours, even if I'm still really heartbroken, I'm not going to like on the walk out of the gym, start crying, my adrenaline's going and I just feel better.
Yeah.
But yeah, sometimes when you try to escape your pain with like just doom scrolling or watching 6 hours of TV, like you end up just feeling worse.
Don't you hate that?
Yeah.
You're like, I spent all this time going away just to come back to exactly what I left. It's horrible.
Was TikTok not healing me? What is going on? Do you know what happens like in the brain when we start to fall in love? Like, is there things that would maybe be helpful to understand or know that like our brain starts to do when we start to really fall for somebody?
It's all just explosions up there, I think.
It's just haywire.
Yeah.
It would be interesting to like, when they do studies, they'll like scan your brain and stuff. If they just did that like constantly as you're dating people.
Yeah, it would be really interesting to see.
Because I think sometimes maybe we want love or a relationship so bad that we would almost ignore what the brain scan says.
Totally.
Yeah.
This is something I've been thinking about a lot, actually. There's you've probably heard of like attachment styles, right? And it came about because of this underlying understanding that as humans, we need connection, right? Like, it's innate in us. We're wired to be, I mean, think about a baby, like they don't regulate themselves.
Yeah.
Like if they're crying, a baby would just not make it if they didn't have a mother or a father or, some caretaker to help regulate that child. And so it's very human. And I think that it's such a natural process for us to be looking for acceptance and community and love. And I guess I've been thinking because my same sister, who, I was talking about a little while ago, she's basically my guru. Because I'll reference something again that she said. Like, she mentioned to me, like, Tasha, sometimes it feels like you're trying to date a parent. Like you're trying to date someone who is going to like really take care of you and like regulate you like a mom would. And I'm like, oh my, I said, first, that's rude. Second, okay, probably. Right. And
you're like, hey, who's the therapist here?
Yeah, I'm like,
Can you
chill? I did not sign up for that.
Yeah.
You're my sister right now. She's also a therapist.
Okay,
so you got to just know walking in the door, it's like she's seeing everything. Like she's older? Diagnosing you. Yeah.
Okay, so she's maybe even had more experience as a therapist.
Yeah.
Okay.
And she's the best. But I think that sometimes we we look for love from people who can meet the need that we're missing,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so, yeah, it would be interesting to do a brain scan and to see like what parts of the brains are activated, because sometimes there are people that I've dated that I'm like, if I was more emotionally regulated, I probably wouldn't date them, you know?
Yeah.
And other people that I was like, that person was way too emotionally regulated for me. They were really threatening to me. They felt like too healthy and I wanted to be smothered, you know? Like,
Okay, yeah.
And so I think there is all kinds of dynamics that go on, like when we look for a mate. But I don't think any of them are bad. I think they're all just part of the wiring that's in us that just says, hey, we're not meant to do this alone.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, are there, so you, when you said there's probably lots of, if you did a brain scan, there's just explosions everywhere. There's lots of things going off. Like, what do you think are the most important things that are happening in our brain to tell us, hey, this is a good relationship, or this person is somebody you are crazy about, you are healthily like interested in?
Yeah. I think it's tricky because I mean, I think about things in parts language a lot. Again, like, I talked about earlier, if I have a part of me that feels really strongly that they want to be taken care of,
Yeah.
right? Then when I'm with a partner who's really caretaker-esque, then I
Yeah.
feel really good. But then maybe that feels violating to this other part of me that's like, just back off and like, give me some space, you know?
Yeah.
And so I think it's really good to understand how our past experiences inform our current lives. And so to understand that, like, ooh, I have some history with maybe not, for example, like not feeling taken care of enough. And so this partner is particularly triggering to me because I don't feel taken care of in the way that this part wants, but hopefully connected to like a self energy enough to say, but what I really want is not a mom from this person. What I really want is a partner.
Yeah.
And so how can I help this part of me that does feel like I'm not being taken care of enough? How can I help meet that person's needs? Because there's a lot of things about this partner that I feel really good about.
Yeah.
So I guess trying to find that energy that doesn't feel anxious and doesn't feel motivated by desperation or scarcity. And in those moments when you're feeling really regulated, how do I feel about this person? Do I feel like we're compatible?
Yeah.
I don't really know if that answered your question.
No,
or
totally.
Not,
Do you personally, like, do you struggle with figuring out if you're super into a guy?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I do. Especially, I've got this streak in me that just like, in my family, we're all kind of perfectionists, and I have a lot of siblings that are like really good at everything they do. And I'm a middle child, and that was so frustrating for me. And so I have a part that just really feels the need to like have other people's approval and to secure love and acceptance in that way. And so I've got a part of me that just really wants like the coolest guy, you know, like I like to think I've done a lot of healing since then, but I like walk in a room and I'm like, who's the coolest guy here? And I'm like, you. I'm like, if I can just secure you, then it's like, I'm like on top of the world. Like nothing could hurt me if I am just cool enough to secure that guy. And that's not a very great way to base compatibility off of.
Well, yeah, just because like I totally see what you're saying, but it's like, how do you quantify how cool someone is?
You know, it's just the vibes.
Yeah.
Well, but I think really what it is, and this kind of goes into my problem with like ick culture right now. You know, like all those interviewers will walk around and be like, what gives you the ick? You know, and we're kind of this thing that's happening right now is like, what I really want from a partner is love and acceptance, right? And I want that from other people. And so if I tie myself to somebody, they're now they feel like an extension of me, but I don't have any control over them. So what I want is I want a partner who's not going to do things that are going to bring shame to me.
Yeah, yeah.
to them and then therefore me.
Right.
And so when someone gives me the ick, oftentimes I find it's because I'm afraid of the shame that people are giving them that is now reflected back on me. So it's like, it has nothing to do with the plaid shorts he's wearing or whatever.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
that I'm afraid people are shaming him and that's coming, sorry.
You're good,
That's coming onto me.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And so
the plaid shorts is tough.
and that's actually fair because I don't know if I could get over that, but
yeah, yeah.
I think I like to think that I could with enough therapy get over a guy wearing plaid shorts.
Totally. What do you feel like for you are 3 or 4, a handful of things that when you're dating a guy, you're like, yeah, I want him to be freaking cool and have a vibe and whatever and have normal shorts. But like, but what I really need to feel loved and fulfilled are X, Y, and Z.
Yeah. I think the number one thing is, are they working on themselves? Because to me, there's 2 categories because we all have damage. I mean, that's maybe not the best way to say it, but we all have our own things to work through.
Yeah.
And there's people who are working on it, people who aren't.
Right.
And that's not like a distinction by, one is not better than the other. It's just when I'm thinking about compatibility, I want to tie myself to somebody who's in a place where they're ready to do that work. And it's not because
I think one is better than the other.
Well, I'm a therapist, so.
But don't you think that's the ideal, is that everyone should work on themselves?
Yeah, I totally do. But I also I want to give grace for people who maybe just like don't have the resources in the same way that these other people do or I do. I've got a really loving family and I've got insurance that helps me pay for therapy and all those things. But somebody who maybe doesn't have the same setup is going to have a harder time getting to the place where they're ready than somebody else.
And if you're like fighting to literally survive, you like self-improvement isn't really. Yeah.
So, but when I am thinking about compatibility, I'm thinking about tying my life with somebody, then I'm thinking, are they committed to healing those parts of them? Because that's what I want. And I know that whatever pain they have, they're bringing to me. And I just want to know that they're taking care of their parts because I'm taking care of my parts and we're going to take care of each other. But I can't fix them. I can't heal them. They have to do that. I can help. They have to do that. So I think that's one of the biggest things. They're working on themselves. And do I feel safe with them? Do I feel like if I share my feelings that we're able to have those conversations, like it doesn't feel threatening to them, or if it does, they're able to tell me that it feels threatening to them, and then we can talk about why it feels threatening, and you get the gist. But like, can we do hard things together? Can we talk about hard things together? And then,
do you feel like that's really rare to find people like that?
I want to say no, but maybe I've just been in Utah County too long. I don't know. I don't know what it is, but
I think it's rare.
I think it's rare.
Yeah.
But maybe not because it isn't what we all want, but because maybe we just don't know how to do it. I don't know, like for whatever reason.
Well, it's got to be tough because you've gotten to a place where you're so comfortable with vulnerability. It's just second nature. It's what you do every day, right? You have an open heart and open ears. And so when you encounter somebody that's like, I don't want to talk about it, you're probably like, what are you talking about? Like,
just want to shake them.
Like I can't deal with that.
Yeah.
You know?
I have remarked to my friends that like, I feel like the more work I do on myself, like my dating pool gets smaller and smaller and smaller. And part of me is like, it's like, am I like losing the chances of like finding someone that I would feel comfortable being with?
Like, should I regress?
Yeah. I'm like, I think I've had enough healing for now before which I'm far, far away from being anywhere where I could be in a place to be like, oh, you're not healed enough for me. Right. So I don't want that to come across.
Well, you know what my theory is? I do think the more you work on yourself and the better, like for lack of a better term, the better product you become, like the pickier you should be, because you should want a similar level of product,
Right.
you know? So like, and that's in all like all the areas of life, you know? If you're like in incredible shape, you should probably desire someone that's also in incredible shape.
Because your lifestyles are
Right.
similar.
Right.
Yeah.
But there are less people that are in incredible shape.
Right.
Right. And same with like if your brain's in incredible shape, you know, and you've done all this work and everything, like you kind of deserve someone that's also done the work.
Yeah. I mean, and I don't know if my brain is in, excuse me, incredible shape or not, but that's what I want.
Yeah.
And I want
It's at
somebody who
least in good
wants
shape.
that. Yeah, I
It's
think
going to the brain gym.
yeah, it's but it takes rest days.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
hey,
Yeah.
sometimes 3 in a row, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
So, um yeah, I think it's tricky because I don't see it as like, I mean, there's just no way for me to ever know like if I'm in the place where I am today because I just was given a lot of resources, gifted a lot of resources, and that made the work. Not that it was easy by any means, but
Mhm.
like it made it possible.
Yeah.
And if that would have been the case if I were in some different situation. And so one thing that I do want to be really careful about is just like withholding judgment from that,
Yeah.
because I will never know if a person isn't doing the work because, you know, for whatever reason. I don't really believe that people just stay in pain because they're lazy.
Yeah.
I don't believe that that's a character flaw. I just think, oh, their path is different than mine,
Yeah.
and our resources, our journey doesn't look the same. And so it's not a question of morality or
Yeah.
character flaws
Yeah.
to me.
Yeah.
It's just
Yeah. I like that because I think sometimes we do, as a society, get really judgmental
mm,
about people because I think sometimes it's just a reflection of our insecurities. You know,
yeah.
you see people that are down and out and they're depressed or they're, you know, they're living on the street or they're struggling with addictions. And you're like, hey, I'm over here working hard.
Yeah,
Like, why can't they do the same? But it's like you had two completely different paths
right.
and you don't even know their path,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. And it's so hard because we we're human, and we don't get to see, like you said, the other person's experience, but we want to make sense of our own experience and
Mm-hmm.
other people's. And that's been something that I think as a therapist, but just as a decent human being, like I really have to work on letting go, because as far as I'm concerned, there's only one person who knows the character of another individual, and that's Jesus.
Yeah.
And that's so not my job. Like I think it's my job to keep myself safe and to hold boundaries that protect my peace,
Mm-hmm.
which is kind of a corny thing to say, but protect your peace.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, that's my job. But it isn't my job to look at somebody and say you're bad, or you to make any kind of judgment about why they do what they do, because I will never know why they
Mm-hmm.
did what they did.
Yeah. Yeah.
And oh, it feels so good to be free from that and just to
Mm-hmm.
say like, this is about me and my boundaries,
Yeah.
but it's not about what God is doing in your life,
Yeah.
or what your journey is like.
Right. Yeah. Cause I think it's so easy to think like, well, if I was in your shoes, I totally wouldn't have acted that way.
Yeah.
But it's just such a kind of a ridiculous thought, even
Yeah.
because we have no idea. Like, I don't even, like, I look at, I'm sure you think about this a lot with you. How many siblings do you have?
I have 9 siblings.
9.
So there's 10 of us.
So a bundle. Do you,
Bundle.
do you ever think of like, okay, me and my siblings, we have all these similarities, but we're also really different humans
Yeah.
despite our exact same upbringing, right? But your siblings also had very different upbringings,
Totally.
right?
Yeah.
Because they were maybe parented a different way. They came into the world at a different time. Their sibling dynamic was different
Yeah.
than yours is, being an oldest one versus a youngest versus middle. Like, so even within a household, the dynamics can be all over the place.
Yeah.
The cultures can be different. And so you're like, you just have no way of knowing what your life would have been like with even a few things altered,
Yeah.
like even one or two formative experiences when you're young. You change those and all of a sudden your trajectory is completely different.
Yeah. No, it's true. I think like it gets, I mean, kind of going back, it gets so messy when you really come down to what makes you who you are.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's just no way to separate it out between like, okay, I do believe that there probably are some innate things that we're born with. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know if we want to call that personality, something that's different about me than you. But then like where that line is,
The nature
it's
versus
like
nurture.
I will never know.
Yeah.
I will never know where that line is.
Yeah.
So, and that really bothered me for a really long time
Right. Right.
because it felt like, well, if I don't know what I am, I just know like, am I just like a compilation of all these traumas that, like, and here
Yeah.
I am as a spit me out.
Yeah.
And I was like, that doesn't feel right. Like, I want to know what I am,
Yeah.
but this is what I am.
Right.
I
Right.
just am. I'm my experiences. I'm whatever I am at my soul. I'm that. And I'm who I am today because of what I've lived through.
Yeah.
And it's messy. It's human.
Yeah.
So,
It is cool though that we just have such unique DNA structures that just make us so different for seemingly no reason.
yeah.
Like because I just have two sisters, and we're only like 3 years apart. So I sometimes I look back at our childhood, I'm like, yeah, we had frickin' the same childhood, right? Why are we so different? But it's like, well, they're female. Like, for starters, there's a completely different life,
Yeah.
you know? And yeah, they've experienced life in such a different way than me. We just happen to like have the same kitchen
Yeah.
and the same, like, yeah, our parents taught us the same things, but at different times
Mm.
and when they were going through different things. And so, I don't know, it's almost overwhelming to think about.
Yeah. It is. And it's overwhelming if you feel like it's your job to figure out that about somebody else,
Yeah,
right? To
yeah,
make that judgment call.
right.
It, that's a job I don't want.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
What is do you do any couples therapy?
I have. Yeah.
Okay. What do you feel like, and I'm sure you get this even when it's not couples therapy, but what do you feel like are people's primary communication pitfalls where you're like, okay, obviously you guys are having problems communicating because,
Hmm.
and I'm sure there's a lot that we struggle with, but yeah, what are some of those?
I think what what my mind goes to is, when we look at how the brain works, right? The nature of trauma is such that if something reminds us of a traumatic event that's unprocessed, um, it's going to send our body into fight or flight.
Mm-hmm.
And so here's an example would be my partner uses a tone that feels condescending to me, whether or not they meant it, feels
Yeah.
condescending to me. And
Yeah.
that reminds me of that time my uncle humiliated me in front of all my cousins.
Right,
I mean,
right.
that's, weird example, but
Yeah,
like
yeah.
all of a sudden I'm in fight or flight now. Where I'm in fight or flight. And so I snap back and I say, well, I don't know why you think you're better than me. And now my partner's like, well, now he's in fight or flight too. And so we're
Yeah.
both in fight or flight,
Uh-huh.
which by the way is a very animal state of mind.
Right.
It's like, how do I get safe?
Uh-huh.
Do I fight? Am I going to fight them? Do I need to run away?
Yeah.
Like all the prefrontal cortex higher thinking that's like, I love my husband. If we argue, someone's gonna have to sleep on the couch, like all those things, like my 5-year plan, offline.
Yeah.
Like they're not, that's not happening.
Yeah, yeah.
It's all about how do I get out of this situation?
Uh-huh.
And so it's like you get two animals that are scared and you put them in the same room and they're fighting and they're like, neither of them want to be fighting. They just want to be safe.
Yeah, yeah.
But they're both triggered. They're both in
Right.
that part of the brain.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that happens a lot.
Yeah.
And so I think it's important to understand when that's happening, to say, I'm in fight or flight right now, or I'm not feeling regulated right now. I don't think any good can come from this. I'm going to step out.
Yeah, yeah.
And when I feel a little better, I want to have this conversation.
Right.
And for them to be able to say that, or for them to do something that's going to help them to feel more regulated.
Yeah.
And to be able to see that from their partner as well, and to say like, ooh, I see that so-and-so is in fight or flight. Might not be the best option to tell them that. If they're in fight or flight, they're going to be like, no, I'm not. I'm fine. I'm completely fine.
Fight or flight. Just point it out each time.
Like,
fight or flight.
And you're in fight or flight. No. So being able to understand where the other person is at, and understanding that you can only help somebody regulate if you're regulated.
Yeah, yeah.
So if you're both not regulated, you need space. Or you need to get to a better place before you can have a conversation about what happened. There's just so much understanding, I think, that comes when we just make our bodies our friends again, and just say like, how do we work with it? Like, it's just doing what it knows to do, and how do we help it to? How do we work with each other in that context? I think.
Yeah. How do we avoid resentment when there's just a million things somebody can do that would cause us to be resentful? Like, and the thing is, some people I think are more, for whatever reason, more sensitive to certain things, and they get resentful more easily. But what's a good, like, if somebody's struggling with resentment with their partner, what's a good way to avoid that quicker? Is it just the second you feel something that's off-putting or potentially upsetting, or you feel like it's condescending or whatever, just in the moment saying like, hey, let's talk about this? What's the best practice to avoid resentment as much as possible?
I think I'm inclined to say, like, if we took a microscope and looked at the situation, what's happening? Like, your partner says something that hurts you, but you're holding on to it because you, for whatever reason, it doesn't feel okay to talk about that with them.
A lot of times it feels silly, right? Because you're like, this shouldn't be a big deal. Like, I even know that it wasn't malicious. I know they're not trying to hurt me, but it still hurt me. And maybe you're insecure because you're like, okay, if we bring it up, I have to admit, why does this hurt me? It's because I'm not over this or whatever,
And Taylor, the surest way to trigger a therapist is to say that your feelings are silly.
Okay.
Just joking, but
no, but that's a good point.
No, but it's true.
Yeah.
For some reason, you feel like you're having a feeling about what they said, and your feeling shouldn't count.
Yeah.
And so I think that's where we take the microscope, and that's where we say, let's unpack this, because your feelings actually do matter.
Yeah.
And if your partner is safe and they love you, then it matters to them too. But for whatever reason, some part of you doesn't feel like it is, and we need to help that part learn that it actually is.
Yeah.
That it isn't silly to have feelings.
Yeah, I like that. There's not any reason to, even if maybe on paper it's an overreaction but maybe, I don't know, maybe there isn't an overreaction if it's just a feeling.
Yeah. I mean, one thing that I really believe is that feelings always come from somewhere.
Yeah.
And if we look at humanity from like an evolutionary standpoint, like, I don't think we create problems for ourselves just for fun.
Yeah.
Like, I think the human race would have died out by now.
Yeah.
I don't think we see that in the animal kingdom. And so it's like, if there's a feeling that's going to create a problem, it's here. You didn't make it up.
Mm-hmm.
It's here for a good reason.
Yeah.
It's here for a good reason. And whether it's proportional to the situation.
That's a good word to use.
Yeah. To me, it doesn't really matter, because I can have a conversation. I can say, ooh, that tone that you used, it really hurt me. And I bet you didn't mean to. I'm feeling hurt right now.
Yeah.
And hopefully a safe person can say, ooh, you're feeling hurt. And you're right, I didn't mean to hurt you, but you're hurt. And I care that you're hurt.
Yeah, yeah.
And like, how can I help you to feel like I
Unhurt.
love you?
Yeah, yeah.
So I think understanding that like our feelings don't have to be logical for them to be valid is really important.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And it also takes the weight off of another person where it's like, if I feel like I have to take accountability for all of your feelings, like I say something that hurts you and you're like, you hurt my feelings, and I feel like it has to be logical, then I can't say sorry if I don't feel like it's something I did wrong. You know, I don't want to be like, well, I wasn't trying to hurt you, which means it's not my fault. You see how that kind of gets messy? But if it's
people
like,
will say like, oh, I'm sorry you feel that way.
Right, right. Yeah. But if it's like, oh, he's having feelings that may or may not have anything to do with me, and I care that he's having feelings.
Yeah.
Like, I don't have to say, oh, that means I did something wrong. Sorry just means you're having feelings, and I care that you're having feelings.
Yeah,
it doesn't mean that I did something wrong.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
That's actually the thing that I would want everyone to know going into therapy is that sorry doesn't mean you did something wrong.
Yeah.
It just means the other person's having feelings and you care.
Right, right. Gosh.
I'm going to get that tattooed on my arm.
Okay, good.
It's going to be really long. But...
yeah, you just show your patience. Okay, good. Yeah. Yeah, I think that the complexity in this issue is that a lot of times, yeah, you have a tiny micro offense or your feelings get hurt, but just a little bit. And so whether you think it's silly or not, you're like, it's not worth bringing up, at least in this moment, whatever. But then, yeah, it just kind of stays there and it doesn't get resolved. And so the next time something happens, you're doubly upset.
Yeah.
Right. And so I do love relationships, and they're not all like this, but I love relationships where you can, in the moment, say like, oh, I don't like that you said that. Like, because that makes me feel this.
Yeah.
And then now they're on alert that, something like this could hurt me, but also I'm going to address it when it does.
Yeah.
And so, but it doesn't have to be a big fight.
Yeah.
It just can be, wow, like, I didn't know you felt that way. Is that really, because you saying this makes me feel this. Because a lot of times not everyone's great with their words,
Yeah. Yeah.
And so a lot of times people say things and that's not really what they mean. And so to stop and be like, can we just kind of break this down and see if we're actually on the same page?
Yeah.
I think can help a lot.
Yeah. I think you really nailed it. Like, especially if a person's unique experiences are informing their decisions now, it's like we just have no idea what another person might interpret from what you say. And so the surest way to understand is just to ask.
Yeah.
And there's so much safety in a relationship where you know that if the other person has a problem, they're going to say something.
Yeah, yeah.
Because although it sends a shock through my body when someone's like, hey, can I talk to you about something you did? I'm like,
right.
Like, please no.
Like, I'd actually rather die.
Yeah. Like, I'm actually just going to move.
Yeah.
Out of state.
Yeah.
Once I sit down and I have those conversations, and after enough of that happening, it's like, I don't have to worry about this person secretly hating me.
Yeah.
Because they tell me when something is going on.
Yeah.
And I also feel like I have permission now to tell them when something is hurting me, because we just have this dynamic. We're both respectful of each other, and we care enough about the relationship to choose discomfort, even though discomfort over resentment.
Yeah. When you're going through, you personally, when you're going through a heartache of some sort, what is your best way to try and heal your heart? Do you feel like you've done a good job of that?
Yeah, all healed up. I've actually done a really great job about that.
You should have that on like your dating app bios. Oh,
fully healed.
All healed up.
All healed up. Well, I have some thoughts, and then I'd actually really like to hear what you have to say about that. I think for me, there's this song by Trevor Hall who
I've seen in concert twice.
you have.
Yeah.
You know, you look like you've seen Trevor Hall in concert twice.
I do.
I'm actually really jealous about that. But called You Can't Rush Your Healing.
Mm-hmm.
And we live in a world that really celebrates productivity and get up and go and just, you know, get her done. And like, it's always on a timeline.
Yeah.
And I have this thing where I want my healing to sit nicely on this timeline.
Mm-hmm.
And for it to be linear. And like, once I felt that, I don't go back and I don't feel it again. And like, I want it to be measurable, and I would like it done now, please.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think grief does not like to be told that.
Yeah.
I think it really, it halts when it feels like it's on a timeline. And so I think what my broken heart needs is permission. Mm-hmm. Which is that, like, hey, you don't have to be done anytime soon. Like, which ironically speeds it up. Yeah. But, you know, I try not to get too in my head about that, where it's like, oh, lay off and it'll speed up. But I'm like still like hoping it'll speed up. You know, you have to kind of, not to get too meta there, but like accepting that my body knows what to do. And when I'm done healing, I'll know. Mm-hmm. Or when I'm done grieving, I'll know. Yeah. And if I'm feeling heavy and sad today, like, I'm not going to make myself get up and go to the gym for 2 hours. You know, like, there might be stuff that I have to do. Mm-hmm. I'm going to be compassionate about that and say, I don't want to leave my bed today, but I got to go to work. And then when I come home, I'm going to take care of me. Yeah. But I don't try and fight against that. I don't try and say, no, we're not sad today. See, I'm going to go out clubbing and I'm going to do this. Yeah. Like, I really try and meet myself where I'm at and just say, like, we're sad. Yeah. Sad bodies want to stay at home. Yeah. Yeah. They want to stay at home and they want to sleep. Right. That's natural. Yeah. So that's what came to me. So let's hear your answer, cuz
okay, real quick sub question.
Okay.
Do you feel like you need to be like fully over somebody to start dating somebody new?
No, I don't think so. Yeah. I think because for me, and I don't think I'm unique in this, mm-hmm. when I get into a breakup, when I have a breakup, it's triggering all sorts of wounds for me. It's like, it's bigger than just that relationship. Yeah. And so if I'm telling myself that I have to be all healed from any kind of attachment wound or any kind of like, if I have to be all better from that before I'm ready to date again, like, I'm just never going to be, I'm just never going to date.
Yeah. That's a good point. 'Cause I think it's funny. I've had a decent amount of times I've had a girl be like, you know, they'll be like, they want to hear kind of your dating history. Right. And so you tell them about a recent breakup or something and I go into full detail and then they're like, wow, it sounds like you're not really over them. And I'll be like, I don't even know if that matters though.
Yeah.
You know, like what, you know, the difference between I'm a lot over her or almost all over her versus completely healed, you know, because like you said, that's such a good point. It's like the breakup did it was a hurricane, you know, it disrupted my entire ecosystem.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I miss her, but I'm also sad because I feel rejected and I'm sad because my hope bubble was burst.
Yeah.
And what I thought might be is now gone. And so, yeah, I'm grieving all these little different parts. And so, yeah, like I might be fairly like over her even, but I'm not over the breakup.
Yeah.
You know, and it's hard to distinguish that. So I almost feel like it's an inappropriate question.
Yeah. Mind your business, respectfully. No, I think it should be like, you know, on the dating apps, you can like move your scale from like, I don't know, liberal, conservative. It should be like, how healed are you from your last? It's like 50%, 60.
Yeah. That's good.
No, it's, that's definitely true. And I think it kind of goes back to that same point, which is that like we're not meant to be alone. So like if
Mm-hmm.
you're expecting yourself to be like, actually I feel great by myself, I don't need anyone else. Like I don't think you're ever going to get there
Yeah.
before you're ready to. The thing that I would be careful of is like, is somebody running from their grief and
Mm-hmm.
using relationships to cover up from that?
Yeah. Yeah.
If that's the case, I mean, like, yeah, that's something to be aware of, that like
Mm-hmm.
maybe they're running from some things that need to be worked through. But
Yeah.
I think that looks different than just em- embracing that something hard just happened and yeah, you're still piecing your life back
Yeah.
together.
Yeah. Okay. What was your question to me?
Oh, how do you take care of your broken heart?
Um, I massage it. I give it a spa day.
Nice.
Um, that's a tough question. I've definitely had different approaches as I've gotten older and experienced more heartache.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like I've kind of fine tuned the process a little bit.
Ooh, Taylor's about to drop some wisdom here. Everybody,
No,
get your pencils out.
I mean the reality is it's still devastating, right? A
Yeah.
broken heart is still devastating, and there's no two ways about it. There's no like, okay, I'm so healthy and in such a good place, I can heal fast and my heart will easily mend and things will be great, right? But I think like the last two breakups I've had have been just exponentially worse than all the other ones, it feels like.
Mm.
And maybe, I don't know, do you feel like pain compounds over the years, or it can?
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
So, yeah, it feels like some of these recent breakups have been like all the breakups combined, and they just, it isn't about this one specific relationship. It's about me and it's about all these things.
Your future and
Yeah,
the
yeah.
dreams that you had, and
Right. And how they're
yeah,
slipping away, and,
yeah,
and so, but because they've been more intense, um, I think I've taken it as an opportunity to be way more just self honest with myself, and I always write about my breakups,
mm,
and a lot of times that kind of informs me. Um, it can inform me on like, why am I actually so sad?
yeah,
Right? Is it because I'm just sad that I don't have a girlfriend, or is it because I was just absolutely in love with this person and now they're gone? Like, there's a bunch of reasons why you're sad, but it's helped me kind of pinpoint what am I actually sad about? And then it is easier to move on, even if it's
yeah,
a long process. But like two relationships ago, I was, we broke up, but it was so amicable. We just like were not working. And we
mm,
both, it was very mutual. But it really, like, really tore me apart more than I thought it would, because I was like, this is ultimately what I want. I don't want to
mm,
be together, but I was just destroyed, and I was like, what is going on? And I guess I did kind of what you said. I just kind of checked in with myself, and I'm like, why is this hurting so much? And it was a combination of things, but it really helped me because I was like, I'm really sad because I had fallen for this person, regardless of if I thought we would make it,
yeah,
you know? And so there's that loss. And she had a couple qualities that I felt like were so unbelievably rare, I would have a hard time finding in someone else,
mm,
even though some weaknesses made it hard for us to even be together, you know?
yeah,
But I was just like, is this, there's some sadness around, are the good parts of what we had, are they even duplicatable
mm,
moving forward? And that was hard to deal with, you know? And so I just really broke it down really like on a molecular level where I was like, okay, why, let's break down why I'm sad in every aspect of the sadness.
yeah,
And I feel like it really helped me. And I was still really sad,
yeah,
you know? But I don't know, it didn't make me wallow needlessly for
yeah,
months and months and months. And it helped me, like, I started dating like almost immediately.
yeah,
And it was fine. Like, and I met somebody really quick after, and she ended up being the next person to destroy my partner.
Love it.
Right. But um but I think because I was so honest with myself and was like, also like, okay, let's look at the relationship, and were there points where I should have ended it earlier?
Hmm.
You know, should we have not gotten so deep? Like, I just tried to really be honest about the whole thing. And then in the second relationship, the same thing. And it didn't last as long, but it was even more painful.
Yeah.
And so I was like, and to be honest, the second one was more difficult because I don't know, I had a harder time pinpointing. It
Hmm.
was like, I know I'm sad because of this and this, but like it didn't make as much sense on paper,
Hmm.
and there was less closure, there was less, like, I don't know, the first one was really hard, but there was a lot of closure, you know. And so I don't know, I'm definitely meandering at this point, but
No, I mean, I love what you said. Just like what a relief to really look closely at what you were feeling and to realize that you make sense.
mhm,
You know, that like none of your emotions were like, that doesn't make sense, or like
yeah,
I shouldn't be feeling that way.
yeah,
Like I think there's a lot of beauty that comes with looking and saying like, yeah, I'm feeling exactly the way that I make sense to be
yeah,
feeling.
yeah,
You know, because feeling crazy is horrible. We don't
yeah.
nobody likes to
And
feel
I
that
and
way.
it compounds, like, if you're feeling really sad and depressed, and then you throw on top of that, well, now I feel crazy
Yeah.
for feeling sad and depressed.
Yeah.
That's how you get like clinically depressed,
Yeah.
you know? And I think another thing I had on my side was I have really amazing friends
Hmm.
that I could reach out to and be like, what I love to do with friends sometimes, because you know, sometimes you're like, I want to get this out, but I'm not really in the mood for a crying session.
Can't relate, but I believe that you feel that way sometimes.
Or maybe like, I don't know, I like to cry on my own terms.
Yes. You don't want to be ambushed with a cry.
Right,
That
right.
never feels good.
But I like to sometimes send just voice messages to friends, you
Yeah.
know, a really heartfelt thing, and be like, yeah, I just wanted to get this out. Like, because sometimes it's maybe discouraging if you're in a really bad spot and they don't answer the phone or something.
Yeah.
And so I'm just like, so I sent a message to one of my friends, and I was just like, bro, like, I don't know why it's hitting me tonight, but I'm just hurting. You know, I honestly thought I was over this, and I'm just not. And I want to be, and I'm just feeling an overwhelming feeling of sadness and loneliness. And I know it'll pass, but like, I'm just feeling it right now. And I know he's not an expert and is going to solve my problems, but he's a friend that we've just been there for each other. And he's been there with me in the trenches and has cried with me. And so I knew this is such a safe, beautiful person to send this message to.
Mm.
And then he sends me back, this long message. And the first thing he said, which I loved so much, was he goes, wow, dude, thank you so much for sharing with me. And that makes me immediately feel validated and
Yeah.
feel like I'm not burdening him, or that I'm crazy.
Yeah.
Right. And then yeah, he doesn't try to solve my problem. He just relates to me and tells me like, yeah, dude, that's so hard. And sometimes that's like what you need most from a friend.
Yeah.
Like, you don't need, okay, well, here's our plan of action now. Like, this is how we can be better and get out of this. It's just somebody to sit with you in your tears and just be there with you.
Yeah.
So that's been just invaluable in the healing process for me. And so I feel for people that feel like maybe they don't have somebody like that.
Mm. Yeah. Well, that's beautiful, Taylor. Thank you for sharing.
Yes.
Because I think you're right that like I think depression thrives in isolation
Mhm.
and connection and just feeling understood is such an important part of healing. And um yeah, it's I love that you send voice memos to, your friends. I think that's a great way to do it. Something that I have made a habit of doing kind of recently is, I don't know, maybe I should try your approach. I should just send voice memos to people. But sometimes if I'm feeling a really big emotion and I don't really know if there's someone I can reach out to in that moment, I'll record like just a voice memo on my phone, and I'll record it all, everything that I have to say if I need to cry or I need to rant or whatever. And then I'll listen to it back, and then just tell myself how much sense I make. And I'm like, wow, yeah, like I'm right here with me. And in some ways it's kind of silly, but in some ways it's like, no, like I'm feeling that way, and hearing it makes sense. And it's just like, I don't know, it kind of feels like I've got my arms around me kind of way.
Right.
And sometimes that is enough, and sometimes it's not. Sometimes I need to call a friend and I need like somebody else to tell me that they're with me.
Yeah.
Just kind of depending on maybe where I'm at during the day, but
yeah. What is your relationship with your phone? Do you feel like you have a good relationship balance? Because I feel like
I actually need to go.
I haven't checked my phone. I just feel like it's increasingly becoming something that everyone struggles with. And I was wondering, if you have a good philosophy or modality that helps you try and stay balanced with it.
Well, I think I cannot authentically speak on this topic until I've admitted that like I'm not happy with where I'm at with my relationship with my phone.
Yeah.
And this is where it's so tricky, because I remember what it was like to be 13 years old and to get my first iPad, not iPad, but it was like an iPod Touch, right? It didn't have internet access. No, it did. It had Wi-Fi, but not like, free roaming or whatever. And I got Instagram for the first time. And all of a sudden, I was really shy. I didn't really know how to talk to people. I didn't feel like I connected with a lot of people. All of a sudden, I could post something, and then people all over the city are thinking about me. Like I'm in their minds. Like, and I felt real in a way that I hadn't felt before. It was like such a powerful pseudo connection for me.
Right.
And I don't think it was all pseudo. Like I think, like my friends and I would message back and forth, and but it also became this thing where it was like I got home from school, and if I was feeling sad and lonely in my room, I'd be like, I should think of something to post on Instagram right now. And I would just make something up. I'd be like, I don't know, I would just think of something, and then that feeling of like, I'm lonely, I'm sad, like it just goes away. It goes away, and I don't have to feel it because all the other tweens are on their iPods and they're saying, oh, you look so cute, we should talk more, and like all these, like all that connection is coming in. Do we ever talk in person? No. Like we don't even look at each other when we're in the lunchroom, but like we've got this like online pseudo relationship where it's like we always comment on each other's pictures and tell each other we look so pretty, but it's not actually filling that need. It's just like slapping a Band-Aid over it. And so I try to have a lot of grace for myself, because I needed that when I was a kid, and it was available to me. And so I relied on it, and it became a really big part of my coping system. And so I try and give myself grace about that, while also recognizing that that's not what I want, right? I don't want to slap a Band-Aid on something if I'm feeling like I'm not connected to my people, or I'm feeling scared that I'm going to drift away into the universe if no one's thinking about me. What I really want is to call a friend and to say, I'm feeling like I'm going to drift away into the universe if you're not thinking about me, But that's harder to do because it's
really vulnerable.
It takes effort and it's vulnerable. But that's what I want. And so I think I don't know the secret for holding boundaries about that, but I think really trying to get real with myself about what feelings are perpetuated because of my phone usage, whether it's doom scrolling or I don't know, Pinteresting.
Yeah.
I don't, all those things. The one thing I don't have is TikTok, because I know I would like,
You'd be
my
done.
life would fall apart.
Right.
I will have to die on that hill, because I just know that that would be the end of it for me.
Yeah,
But so yeah, it's interesting. My sister, hello, my sister again. She should be the one on this podcast, I think.
Right.
Has this device, and I don't. It's called Brick. Maybe you've heard of it. I don't know.
I've heard of it. I don't remember.
So it's an app that you download on your phone, and then it comes with a little like token. It's like a little thing, and you go on there on your settings, and you put on which apps you want this brick to block. And so your Instagram, your Snapchat, whatever it is. And then when you open that app and you tap it to the little token, it bricks your phone. And so you now do not have access to those apps. So it's like, you can try deleting the brick app. It won't work. You can try like restarting your phone. Like, there is no way you can get onto those apps until you go back to that little token and you tap it. And so it's like, in the morning, you tap your phone and you go to work, and it's like, you want to scroll at your lunch break, but guess what? You can't.
At home.
You're bricked. Yep. You've left your token somewhere where you can't access it. Yeah. And then you go home, and then
you're like looking for friends that have a token.
Yeah, exactly. You're like, I don't know if that works, but that would actually, you got a token? Trying to bum a token off. But that's one thing that I've seen be like pretty successful, and it's amazing.
Do you have it then?
I have bummed off of her using hers.
Okay.
But I have since moved further away. So now if I were to like brick, it'd be like 6 days before I could get back on social media, and I'm not sure I'm like quite ready for that level of commitment. But it's amazing when I do that, and I just take off the table. I just say, like, I'm not even gonna give myself the option.
Yeah.
It's like, I feel like so much lighter and so much more present, and I'm like, why don't I do this all the time? And then I get back on, and I'm like, why don't I do this all the time? You know, it's just,
it's funny. You know what I've loved the balance is when I've like traveled abroad. A lot of times I'm just on airplane mode all day, trying to conserve battery, and I'm just taking pictures all day and stuff. So I'm on my phone, but I'm not looking at anything, right? I'm not on social media or anything. And then the only time I'm really on my phone is like at night in the Airbnb or something for a little bit. And I love that.
Yeah, it's a good feeling.
Because you're like, it's still nice to check in with everyone, see what people are up to, whatever, read all your texts, post your cute pictures from the trip, but it's not such a huge part of your day. It's not consuming hours and hours. And I think a lot of times it's easy to be like, oh, I'm not on social media that often, but maybe it's because you don't have large, long chunks, but just 100 times a day, you're just looking and not interesting, or, the second you feel an inkling of boredom, you grab your phone. And I think there's some danger in that, because I think a lot of creativity sparks from boredom.
Totally. Yeah. I have a friend, my brother-in-law, who, this was a couple months ago, but we were just having a conversation, and he said something like, I was just thinking about, I don't remember what he said. Like, I was thinking about the Ice Age or something. Yeah. And I was like, you were just thinking about, like, did you see a video? Or he's like, no, I was just pondering on it. Yeah. I was like, I need to bring back pondering. I don't know when the last time I've done that is, where I just like sat there and I just thought about something.
Right.
I need to do more of that, because you're right. Like, that's where like great minds come up with stuff.
Yeah.
Doing that, know? And I just have been denying myself of the privilege of just like thinking of things. That just feels so like, well, duh, but I just don't do that very often.
Yeah. And even for myself, a lot of times when I'm doing something where I can't be scrolling or whatever, I'll throw on music.
Right.
And I love music, and I think it's healing, and not very many negative things about it. But yeah, sometimes just silence for a little bit can be really good, because you can just really get more into your brain, I think. I don't know.
Yeah. And it's easier to like understand what's happening inside of you too, when you don't have any stimuli coming from outside of you. I think that's huge.
Right. Um, what's your advice? I'm sure you've met with people that struggle with this, but just for somebody that is going through maybe some chronic illness,
Mm.
and with that is connected maybe some ongoing feelings of hopelessness, like, you know, because you've talked a lot today about, being connected with your body and stuff, but when your body is betraying you and is breaking down, how do you hold on to hope in those moments that feel pretty hopeless?
Yeah. And so when you say chronic illness, like you mean like physically,
Yeah.
and then the emotional side that comes with that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, this is tricky because I mean, I have close loved ones who struggle with chronic pain, and
Yeah.
it is, oh, it's so tricky. And I really only just have like personal opinions on it because I don't know what that's like. Um, but I guess my first thought is to say only good can come from working to heal your relationship with your body, right? And so some people have more complicated relationships with their bodies than
Mm-hmm.
others.
Yeah.
I fully recognize that. Um, and so I don't want to make it sound like it's the same for everybody. There's an amazing book um, there's so many books I think about this topic. Probably the most common would be like The Body Keeps the Score. Other books that I really, really like that have been life-changing for me are Waking the Tiger by Peter Levine and When the Body Says No by Gabor Mate.
Mm-hmm.
And they
I like him a lot. I
he's
haven't I
so
haven't
cool,
read any of
right?
his stuff, but I've seen a
Yeah.
lot of his stuff.
Yeah, he's so cool. I feel like he's like my best friend who never met me.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
um the idea that our emotional health and our physical health are so connected.
Mm-hmm.
And so um I think about, what does a body in fight or flight do? Well, only the bare essentials that are important for getting safe. So pumping our heart, breathing, blinking, all those things that need to be done. What is it not doing? Well, it's not digesting. I'll
Mm-hmm.
tell you that. It's not healing, little cuts or things like that. Like the body,
Your immune system breaks down.
right? The chronic anxiety, someone who's chronically anxious, their body is not operating in its full measure
Yeah.
because it's trying to get safe.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think a huge part of, and this is maybe a little bit of a hot topic because there are different opinions, and I don't know enough to really have an educated, this is what but I do believe that the body and the mind are connected.
Mm-hmm.
And so an increase in these autoimmune disorders and things like that are happening at the same time as an increase in anxiety, like chronic anxiety
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
chronic depression and
Mm-hmm.
things like that. Like, I just don't know how we could say that that's coincidental.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And whether we start, like which came first or, I don't know about all that.
Yeah.
But like, to not consider them both in the question, I think is very foolish.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So working through your mental health and working to help your body to feel calm so that you can have more energy for your body to heal itself.
Yeah.
Or working through the trauma so that you have less cortisol in your body, which is stressful, like cortisol is hard on the body. Like
Yeah.
those things are so important. And so I think people with chronic illness are some of the best candidates to see really amazing change come from focusing on their mental health.
Yeah, yeah, that's cool. Yeah, because and there might be, certain people with whatever their illnesses are, like unfortunately, they're some of them are degenerative and some of them
Yeah,
are even fatal. But you only have two choices. You can work on your mental health. It will improve your health. It might not heal your health,
yeah,
but it's gonna make it's gonna make your life better.
yeah.
Like do you like Jordan Peterson?
I'm not very familiar with Jordan
Oh, okay.
Peterson, so
Okay.
I don't know.
He has he's kind of talking about this and your like the difference in our attitudes and dispositions, but he said like, you know, you'll meet you'll see two people, they both get diagnosed with cancer and it's stage 4 and it's devastating. And he's like, there's a type of person that they'll that will make their life and everyone around them their life a living hell, because they'll be miserable and they'll become a victim and they will become angry and resentful and bitter, and then the death is that much more awful because it's been awful for the last 6 months.
Right.
And he's like, and then there's people that accept it for what it is and choose to continue to work on themselves and to spread as much love as they can while they still can.
Mm.
And he's like, you'd be surprised at the difference between those two people, even though they both got dealt a horrible, hand.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think it's easier said than done, and, maybe doesn't mean much from somebody that's very healthy, but it's like, yeah, you can maybe the best way to deal with your physical illness is to deal with your mental, you know.
Yeah. I Somewhere along the line we started drawing lines between the sciences
Yeah.
and saying like this is physical, this is mental, I think there's a lot of wisdom that comes from saying like this is one, like you are one entity,
Yeah. Right.
and the interactions between the two, like we've got to be talking about both,
Yeah.
otherwise we're not giving you all the resources.
Yeah. Yeah. I like that. I have a couple quotes I want to read to you
Let's hear
and
them.
hear your thoughts. Um, they're actually both by Fyodor Dostoevsky.
Okay.
Um, this first one is about, actually they're both essentially about love. Um,
Great.
so he says, "What is hell? I maintain that it is the suffering of being unable to love." Would you agree with that? I was while you're thinking, I was I read that and I was thinking to myself like the inability to love would be hell, right? I think sometimes I almost think the opposite, like loving someone can be hell because it opens up your heart to
Yeah.
serious damage,
Yeah.
right? But I think sometimes even worse is feeling like you maybe can't love, or that love is off the table,
Hmm.
or that love is unachievable.
Yeah. That's interesting. I think maybe like subconsciously when you read that, my brain switched it and said like in hell is the inability to feel loved.
Mm.
And I guess maybe that's what resonates more with me, but I think maybe it's saying the same
Yeah,
thing,
yeah, I think
right?
so.
I Yeah, to me that does resonate because I think that's where healing happens. That's where, in the connection, in the companionship, and to be denied that is to stay in your pain. And
Mm-hmm.
so yeah, I think I don't I think that's it makes me think, okay, well, what gets us to that point then? What makes us unable to love or unable to feel love.
Yeah, yeah.
And because that does feel like something I've experienced,
Yeah.
like it feels like something that my heart says I know that feeling.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess I'm inclined to feel like the thing that stops me from feeling love is shame,
Mm-hmm.
or like a feeling of unworthiness, or like that's the wall that keeps the love out, that says
Yeah.
not for me,
Right.
not for me. And yeah, it's that's not a great place to be. Yeah.
Yeah, and so this other thing he says is kind of not its opposite, but it's a little more on a positive note. He says to love another person is to see them as God intended them to be.
Hmm. I think that's beautiful. I'm curious why you chose those quotes. Like, what speaks to you about that?
Um, I don't know. Love is this weird phenomenon that consumes my thoughts a lot. Um,
You're the Taylor Swift of the podcast world.
hopefully, yeah. I mean, we have the same name, but I think I just think love is connected to everything, and so whether it's romantic love or familial love, the love of a friend, like it's all the same, and so I'm just like if we're not to me if we're not focused on love, I think we're missing the mark.
Hmm.
I think what's the alternative? You're focused on your career, or you're focused on power, or you're focused on success. Like those things are fine, but I think yeah, if your focus isn't love, you're missing the boat.
Yeah.
Um, and so I think about it a lot. I think about the love I have for my friends, and I think about the love I have for my nephew and my cousins and old coaches, and even the love I have for strangers that is a different kind of love. Um, but yeah, I just think it's so important. And even if you think, well, I'm not a lovey dovey. That's not me. But yeah, I'm a family guy, right? It's like, well, dude, that's love. you know, I just
Hate to
think,
break it to you.
right? I just think sometimes people, probably men especially, get a little queasy about the word love, right? Um, it almost feels vulnerable to even say the word love,
Oh, I
you
hate
know?
that.
It,
Bring back love.
right, exactly. But yeah, so I think I loved both these quotes because it kind of shows like how hellish life can be without love, and then how divine and life-giving life can be with love, with the right kind of love, when you see somebody as God intended them to be.
Yeah.
um, and then yeah, what a hell you can be in if you feel like, even if you're in a relationship but you're like, I don't feel loved, I don't feel seen. Like that's a very real hell. I think that some of the most miserable people on earth are married.
Yeah.
And they're so miserable because they're in a relationship technically, but they don't feel seen and they don't feel loved.
Yeah.
Yeah. So those spoke to me in a big way. Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
There's that quote from Perks of Being a Wallflower that I think about all the time. It's like, we accept the love we think we deserve.
Yeah.
And I think that that's just so true. Like, to be without love, or to feel like, just not getting in, like I just can't feel it.
Mm-hmm.
That is so horrible. And I think we can't love somebody else more than we love ourselves.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so it's
It's a
like,
hard reality.
yeah, if you don't believe that you're worthy of love, good luck giving that grace to someone
Yeah.
else,
Yeah.
Like, even I think subconsciously that's what's happening, because I if our divine nature, who we are, like, if we can't assign that to someone else if we don't really believe in a God who does that
Yeah.
for everyone, or who is that to
Yeah.
everyone. And so but it's tricky. It's tricky, especially if you've never been shown that kind of love. If you've
Mm-hmm.
never been shown an unconditional, like, you don't earn this. Nothing that you do is attached to this love.
Yeah, it's
It's
just there.
separate.
Yeah.
You just are.
Yeah.
You just are loved. If you
Mm-hmm.
don't know that because you don't have examples of that,
Mm-hmm.
this is a foreign concept. Like,
Right.
this is hard to wrap your mind around, that
Yeah.
somebody could love you even though you do bad things sometimes.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. It's a tricky concept, and it's radical. It's
Mm-hmm.
radical to believe that somebody, somewhere, something could just love me
Yeah.
with no strings attached.
It's funny. It's maybe the most, like, you can say what you want if you have a more of an atheistic approach to things. You can say what you want about maybe how fantastical the idea of God is. But to me, maybe the craziest thing you can believe is that, yeah, there's a being that loves you unconditionally. I mean, I believe it, but it
Yeah.
sounds crazy
Yeah.
because it is so radical. It is so unique. And obviously, you get a portion of that, a percentage of that with your parents that love you so easily
Of course.
and so unconditionally, hopefully most parents. But yeah, if your relationship with that is strained and you've never seen it before, like, yeah, it can just seem like an impossibility.
Yeah, and a perfect love would require a perfect person.
Yeah.
And we don't make those.
Right. Right.
I mean, not God doesn't make those as far as I'm concerned. We become those.
Yeah.
But yeah, I agree, and I think the relief and the peace and the calm that comes with that belief that, like, there is somebody who just knows that you're worth it, you're worthy,
Mm-hmm.
like, that is funny because I think a lot of people worry, maybe subconsciously, like, oh, if I tell myself that I'm loved no matter what, then I'll just go off the rails and I'll just do whatever I want to because
Yeah.
I know I'm loved. It
Yeah.
doesn't matter what I do.
Right.
Um, but I think the opposite effect is what happens, because when I feel like I'm not proving myself, I'm not earning something, I'm doing what feels right to me.
Mm-hmm.
I believe that I have right in me. Like, I believe that I have that conscience, that compass that points me. And now I'm not doing it from a place of anxiety.
Yeah.
I'm doing it from a place of calm. And that feels more true to me because it's what I want to do.
Yeah.
Not something that I'm afraid of what will happen if I don't.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
That changed things. That changes things, I think.
Right. Right. Um, okay, Tasha, we'll wrap things up here, but is there if you could go back and give yourself some wonderful advice from all these things you've learned, what what like what version of yourself do you think you'd go back and give the most advice to? Like
Ooh.
Tasha from a couple of years ago, middle school Tasha, who do you think would need to hear the wisdom you've accumulated the most?
Is there like a option D, all of the above? I I guess I won't think too hard about it. I always have. It's funny. I wear a bracelet for this part of me that I just like. I like to witness her. I like to have her physically on me so that she knows I got her.
Uh-huh.
I've got a younger version of me who um is just trying to figure out life and trying to figure out, what makes her good, what makes her lovable. And I would just love for that version of me to know that, like, that's not something she has power over.
Mm-hmm.
Like, she's going to try and earn it. She's going to try and manipulate it out of God. She's going to try and do all kinds of things that are going to hurt her because she believes that that's what earning love demands of her.
Yeah.
But I would have her know that she can't touch that, actually. She doesn't have access to changing
Mm.
that. It's
Yeah.
just there. And just take a breath, maybe check in, just let yourself know that you're not going to float off into the universe if no one's thinking about you, because someone's always thinking about you.
Yeah, yeah,
Like I believe in heavenly parents who hold me really close,
mm-hmm.
you know, even though I'm here and they're wherever they are, I don't know.
Yeah.
But I'm theirs and I can't actually change that, even
Yeah.
if I wanted to.
Right.
I think there's a lot of peace that comes in the belonging that feels.
Yeah, that you're divinely loved regardless.
Yeah.
Yeah. What is that just a bracelet from when you were a kid?
No, I made it myself. You know,
Mm.
it was at the same time that, you know, Taylor Swift was doing friendship bracelets.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, that's kind of annoying because I had the idea separate of that. And so now everyone
Right.
just thinks I'm a big Swiftie, which I am.
Right.
But
It's not
this is
related.
separate.
Yeah, yeah.
It's separate. And it's, yeah, it's just one way that, I mean, I don't always wear it,
What
but
does it say?
it says don't skip therapy.
Okay.
Yeah. But it's in gold, her favorite color.
Okay, yeah.
A younger version of me's favorite color. And it's one way that I just acknowledge, like I acknowledge how she shows up for me. In fact, can I please read you a poem?
Please.
Okay, I gotta get.
Yeah, yeah. That's all I wanted from you.
But you didn't ask for it, so you wanted me to read your mind?
Yes. Okay, I wanted two things. I wanted you to read a poem and read my mind.
Okay, so this is by Emery Hall, who's Trevor Hall's wife.
Okay.
And an amazing poet.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, you're going to want to look her up.
Okay.
So she says, make peace with all the women you once were. You can substitute men in there. I'll give you permission.
Yeah.
Lay flowers at their feet. Offer them incense and honey and forgiveness. Honor them. Give them your silence. Listen. Bless them and let them be. For they are the bones of the temple you sit in now. For they are the rivers of wisdom leading you towards the sea.
Wow.
And that's called I've Been 1,000 Different Women.
Wow.
And, oh, I think I just need that tattooed on my forehead, I think, because just the spirit that comes with that of just forgiveness and compassion and love, like I want to bring that with me to all the versions of myself.
Yeah. And I think it's easy to do the opposite and to sort of demonize your past and be like, yeah, I've improved and stuff, but I was an idiot. Or, you know, and I made this mistake and I made this mistake and I couldn't see straight back then, but it's like that's all those beautiful parts, you know, make who you are today, and you have no one else to credit for who you are today.
Yeah.
You know, that's really cool. I love even the detail of like, you know, lay them, you know, give them honey, give them incense, you know.
Yeah.
But so it's almost like this idea of gifting your past.
Yeah.
And making it sacred.
Yeah. Owning your story.
Yeah. That's really cool. Gosh, I love Trevor Hall even more now.
I know.
For marrying such a poet. That's awesome. Well, yeah, do you have any more questions for me or anything? Any curiosities?
Yeah, I'm interested to know what is your favorite thing to talk about on this podcast? Because I did my research coming in, you know, like, and people like, I'm telling like, I'm going to be on this podcast. They're like, what's it about? And I'm like, well, it's about love and about spirituality and like feeling things. And you kind of you cast a wide net.
Yeah.
And so, I'm interested to know like, what just gets you jazzed to talk about in podcasts?
I just love talking about things that make people feel alive and make people feel more human. Like one of my favorite authors, his name is David Foster Wallace, and somebody asked him what his novel was about. And he just said, oh, it's about what it means to be human. And it's funny because the novel is like really long and complex, and it's like there's geopolitics and there's a tennis academy and there's a halfway house, and you're like, it's about what it means to be human, but it's like, yeah, that's the underlying story. That's what actually matters. And so, yeah, I have these themes I always come back to because they're interesting to me and they make me feel alive, they make me feel jazzed, but yeah, they tend to be about love. They tend to be about togetherness and
Mm.
connectedness. And one of my favorite things I'll ask like someone who's married is I'll ask them like to tell me about their spouse or how they met. And there's been probably 5 or 6 people that I've asked them that question and they just start tearing up. And I'm like, that's that's it.
Yeah.
That's what I want, and that's the most beautiful thing in the world. And some people answer it like it's a business question, and that's fine. I'm not judging
Yeah.
them, but it's interesting to see how people answer that really simple question, and I think you can tell by their response their level of gratitude for having found the person
Mm.
and their level, and not everyone is as open and vulnerable and in touch. But I try to have those kind of people on
Yeah.
because those are the kind of people I jive with. But but yeah, sometimes people answer and you're like, wow, that's such a simple question. Like they had such a deep answer to.
Mm.
And so I always tell people like the reason I podcast is very much twofold. It's very much like hopefully in an ideal world, like it can help people and people can resonate with it and it can make people feel less alone. But it's also very much for me and my curiosities
Yeah.
and my passions and seeing people talk about things that lights them up. That just, I don't know, that just infuses life into me, like
Yeah.
when I see you talking about just how important it is to be with yourself and to feel things, that makes me feel like, wow, like that's just like, it's something I've heard before, but seeing it come out of you with such passion makes me feel it even deeper and it resonates even deeper. It goes into my bones. And so it's cool because each guest has really new insights on really very similar topics,
Yeah.
you know? And so, yeah, I couldn't be any more happy with with what I'm doing. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad that you let us in on your curiosities and the
Yeah.
things that you're interested in,
Yeah.
because there is just a great spirit about this podcast that just feels very disarming
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
welcoming and empowering to be more vulnerable. And so
Yeah.
I think you're out here doing the Lord's work.
Thank you so much. And I was thinking during this episode, I was like, no wonder Tasha's a therapist. Like you have this, whether it's innate or not, you have this ability to feel like a very safe landing place
Mm.
verbally and even spiritually. Like it just feels like I don't know you especially well. We've met one other time, but it feels like I could tell you anything. And not only would you be non judgmental, but you would be hearing it in a really earnest way and feeling it with me. And it's just a unique gift, I think.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I really appreciate that.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's good. You do feel like an imposter sometimes
Right.
in your field, I think, no matter what you do.
Sure.
But
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah. Oh, I want to share one little story with you since we're on
Okay.
this topic.
Share a story.
So I've waited tables for a lot of years, and I waited at this steakhouse for like 6 or 7 years, and then I did tech for a couple of years. It drained my soul, and then I left.
We all
And
do our
yeah,
time.
yeah, yeah. And then the podcast has started to grow and take a lot of my time, but I was like, I need a little more income. And so I went back and started waiting tables just a couple days a week. And I actually had this experience last night. And I'm not to a point where like, the podcast is growing and it's awesome, but it's still like, I'm not, people don't know who I am. You know what I mean? But I have a bigger, presence on social media and stuff. But um, one of the waitresses came up to me and she's like, "Hey, some guy at my table wants to talk to you." And I was like, "Who is it?" And
Ooh.
she's like, "I don't know." I was like, "Okay, whatever." So I go over there thinking maybe it's an old friend or something, and it's just two strangers. And this is big burly guy, and he's got tattoos, and he's jacked, and he's probably like 6'5", and he has a big beard, and he's like, "Hey, bro, like, I'm sure you get this all the time, but like, are, do you do a thing on TikTok?" And I was like, "Yeah, yeah." And and then he starts getting really serious, and he's like, "Yeah, I just wanted to say thank you because like I started watching your videos when I was going through chemo, and I was just having a really hard time, and I just gotten off of deployment, and I got shot a couple times, and then I get home and I get chemo, or I get cancer, and I'm going through chemo, and then I just felt like I wasn't going to make it." And then I started watching your videos, and he's like, "I don't know if I hadn't watched your videos, I don't know if I would still be here."
Wow.
And I was just like, I like started tearing up. I'm like in the middle of a really busy shift, and I have like lots of things I need to do, and and I'm just like at this stranger's table, just getting emotional. And he got up and gave me a big hug, and I was just like, "Yeah, man, this is." I've for sure had some imposter syndrome, and felt like, yeah, I don't know. I'm just speaking my truth. I'm not an expert in anything, and I don't know if this is helping anyone, but I don't know. I enjoy doing it, so I'm going to keep doing it. And then something like that happens, and I'm like, well, wow, I like that could be the only reason I've done this, and it would be worth it,
Mm.
you know. So it was just such a cool moment I wanted to share.
That's beautiful,
Yeah,
Taylor. You sounds like you don't know a lot of the good that you do, but
sure.
I'm glad that you get those moments to hear it
Yeah,
because yeah, I think you're impacting a lot more people than you think.
thank you, thank you. I appreciate it.
And
Well,
folks at home, he's arrived. He's being recognized in
that's right.
restaurants. Like, comment, share, do all the things
That's right.
because
That's right.
Taylor's
I
he's
could
the
be at I
best.
could be at a restaurant near you, and you don't know.
Yeah.
Um,
I don't know if I'm allowed to break the fourth wall like that, but
oh, you can break any wall
okay.
you want. Yeah, yeah. All right, Tasha. Well, thank you so much for coming on, and yeah, we'll share your social media and stuff if you want, and
Okay,
people can go poke around if they're more curious.
perfect.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks a lot.
Okay.
Okay.